Begin Podfix Network transmission. In 3, 2, 1.
What is up, plant people? It is 2021. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, we made it to 2021. Specifically, today is Tuesday, the 5th of January in the year 2021. And we're back for another episode of the Planthropology podcast, the show where we dive into the lives, careers, ambitions, and overall coolness of some really cool plant people. I am Dr. Vikram Baliga. Oh, I said I wasn't going to do that. I'm sorry. I'm Vikram Baliga, your host, and I'm thrilled to be with you today. So today's a little bit different. This is our 50th episode. Now, I know you're going to look at this and say, well, one, this doesn't have an episode number. And two, I'm pretty sure I just listened to episode 36 a little while ago. So this is the 50th overall episode to come out. And I've really managed to screw up my numbering system for episodes. So I was going to explain that too, because why not? So main episodes with guests, also those that are going to be in our Plants of the World or Plants in World Tradition series, will have episode numbers, 35, 36. The next one that comes out next week? No, in 2 weeks with my friend Rachel Boyd will be 37. But overall, including bonus episodes, which will not have episode numbers, this is number 50. It's 50. Isn't that wild? 50 episodes, y'all. It's crazy face. So crazy. Okay. I'm excited. Can you tell? I'm very excited. So I wanted to do something a little bit different today. So I'm actually re-releasing one of my favorite episodes from the past year, and as a replay, because it was episode number 6 with Dr. Glen Ritchie, who is the chair of the Department of Plant and Soil Science. He's my boss. I've taken a couple of classes from him throughout my schooling, and he's really just a wonderful human being. And I thought as we were getting into 2021 and a new year, I love this episode because he has some really refreshing and cool takes on academia and the way we should approach academia, from publishing to teaching and everything in between, and science communication, stuff like this. And I just think it's so cool that someone in his position, that is a well-respected scientist, cares enough about the students and about communicating science and closing the feedback loop and everything else, to have some of the opinions he does and to run our department in the way he does. And I'm not just saying this because he's my boss. I'm saying it maybe a little because he's my boss. I'm just kidding. I'm not that guy. But I really mean it. I have looked up to Dr. Ritchie for quite a while, since the first time I took one of his classes, I guess as a master's student, a long, very long time ago. So I wanted to release this. I thought it'd be a fun way to kick off 2021 and celebrate episode 50. And we'll have some great new content and new interviews and other stuff starting next week. But also to celebrate episode 50, I'm going to do another sticker giveaway. Now, I think there's some of you out there that are still waiting for stickers, because I think I said a while back, I found a whole bunch of envelopes full of stickers and cards for some of you, sitting in a drawer on my desk that I apparently never mailed, because I am the absolute worst and I'm very sorry. So you're going to get your stickers. And in fact, I've got some new ones out with the new logo. So you'll get some of the old ones, some of the new ones, and probably a brand new handwritten note, because the world that existed last time I wrote those doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. And the world is new, and I have new things to say. So you're going to get your stuff. But if you're out there and you're listening to this, if you're one of our very many new listeners, which thanks so much for listening, it's so cool to have you around, I'm going to do a sticker giveaway for episode 50. So over the next few weeks through the month of January, if you drop a review or leave a rating for the show, a 5-star rating, I hope, and leave a review for Planthropology on either Podchaser Castbox or Apple Podcasts, all you have to do is take a screenshot of that and email it to me at planthropologypod@gmail.com. Send it to me on social media, on any social media, and I will mail you a sticker or 2 or 3 and a handwritten note, because I appreciate the reviews. I appreciate the feedback. It helps keep us up in the rankings in some ways. And if nothing else, it's proof of, it's social proof that people listen to this podcast, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So leave me a review and a rating, take a screenshot, send it to me, and I'll send you some swag. What else? Is there other stuff? There's probably other stuff. Again, starting at the end of this month, the 4th Tuesday of the month, it'll be the next installment of our Plants and World Traditions series that we started with Plants of the Winter Solstice. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let it be a surprise what the topic is every month and what part of the world we'll be visiting and talking about. We've got a great episode next week with Rachel Boyd, who is the host of the upcoming In the Grow podcast, which I'm thrilled about. I get to be a contributor for that a little bit. So that show drops, I believe, on the 21st of this month, January 21st, 2021, 1/21/21. I like it. I dig it a lot. Palindromes are rad. And so I wanted to release her episode right before her show comes out. And so that'll be coming up. We've got some great guests that you may have heard before, you may have seen on social media. Also, if you have ideas for the show, guests you'd like to hear, people you'd like me to talk to, topics you'd like me to cover, send them my way. But thanks for everything. I hope this year is wonderful for you. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. And I hope you are being kind to the humans around you. So without anything else to get in our way, here's episode 6 again. Unnumbered episode today. I'm just saying words. The replay of Academia, the Art of Storytelling, and Digging Graves with Dr. Glen Ritchie. All right. Well, we are live. Thanks for being in with me, Dr. Ritchie.
Well, thanks. I'm excited to be here, Vikram.
So, like I said in the introduction, Dr. Ritchie is our department head here in the Department of Plant and Soil Science. So can you introduce yourself a little more? Tell us where you went to school, where you came from, all that.
Sure. My name's Glen Ritchie. I came from the great state of Idaho. I grew up on a small dairy farm in southeast Idaho, and I was the 5th out of 6 kids, and as a result, I was very much the labor for the farm as opposed to a decision maker. And really, I have a very kind of a unique background in that not only did we farm, but we also ran a small cemetery. So from the time I was about 16 years old, I was actually digging graves by hand.
Wow.
And my first experience with soil science actually came from digging graves. And so, yeah, so, to a large extent, that shaped, I guess, what I didn't want to do with
graves.
Yeah, exactly. I discovered that I didn't want to dig graves, and I discovered that I didn't want to milk cows, especially in the winter, because it's cold in Idaho in the winter, and it's not a lot of fun. Yeah, you think it's painful for you to be in a cold milking parlor in the winter. Just imagine trying to, to clean off the cows' udders. They weren't too happy about it either.
They're probably mostly frozen at that point.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. So I'm trying to work through a question that makes sense about the cemetery experience. So, so your family ran this? It was like a family business, or?
It had been in our family for about 2 generations. It was something that was run by the community, but they needed people who were willing to mow, who were willing to dig graves, and who were willing to do general maintenance on the cemetery. And that's what our family did. a week after Memorial Day, we would get up at about 4:30 in the morning, and we would go and take all of the flowers off of all of the graves. We would load them in a big horse trailer, and we would take them. And the ones that could be salvaged, we used to beautify the local community, which was usually like around the canal banks close to our farm. And those that weren't, we had to take to dispose of.
Wow. That's definitely an interesting introduction into plant science, plant and soil science. Yeah, so you did floriculture, you did soils. It's
yes, and I did a poor job at all of them. It was a lot of fun. I've told others that it is interesting to think about the big questions. Life, death.
Sure.
Etc. When you're driving a lawnmower around the cemetery for 8 to 12 hours a day once a week, it's a little bit disconcerting when you're having those same thoughts about life and death when it's 10:30 or 11 at night and you're trying to finish a grave for the next day and you're alone by yourself in this dark cemetery.
Yeah, this greenhouse is creepy enough at night, and I can't. Yeah, that's funny. Okay.
Yeah, and I've thought, it would be interesting to write a book when I get older. Places that I've been creeped out in my life.
You should definitely write a book. I would read that book. I have a picture somewhere of me walking out one day, and I turned around and just shot a picture down this hallway, and there's like red lights coming out of one greenhouse and bright yellow lights, and there's definitely an angry ghost living here somewhere.
A little bit otherworldly.
A little bit.
Yeah. In fact, I did my PhD at the University of Georgia at the Coastal Plain Experiment Station in Tifton. And, it's about 3 hours from the main campus. It's a little bit of a small town, a little bit of, trees everywhere, a little bit secluded. And in the main building that I was in, there was a picture that the eyes would follow you.
Oh, no.
And so, during the day, that wasn't a big deal. But when I would go in after hours, that picture just absolutely freaked me out.
Yeah.
So, one of the early station directors there in Tifton was still looking over my shoulder. And his picture was right next to the lab that we worked in.
Yeah, that's really creepy. I think I've decided we need to start telling, like when we do tours out here, we need to start telling new grad students that it's definitely haunted.
Yeah.
Just to, because some of them, there's one student for sure that if I'm ever up here late, he's here too. He's definitely always here. And maybe if I could convince him that it was haunted, he would go home.
Yeah, that's a great point. We could even have a story about, this, we haven't had any actual graduate students die at the greenhouse, but we've seen a lot of dreams die. It's those dead dreams that are haunting
that are haunting the
place
of projects that never happened or never got finished.
Yeah, that's right. So I went to 2 years at a liberal arts university or college there in Southeast Idaho. Used to be called Rick's College, and the joke was, who's Rick's? Or who's Rick?
Right.
I went there for 2 years. It's now BYU Idaho, and it's a 4-year institution. Went to Utah State, where I got my bachelor's and did my master's with Bruce Bugby.
Oh, cool.
Really fell in love with the controlled environment, but he also extended my project to where I was doing remote sensing. And I did spectroradiometer research with him, and I had to come up with a platform because you can't carry a spectroradiometer and a computer at the same time,
right,
and hold one out and be taking measurements while typing on the other without some type of a platform.
Right.
So I designed my first, what I would term redneck engineering project, where I actually designed the system where I was pushing a wheelbarrow down the rows, and the wheelbarrow had a piece of PVC with a 90-degree angle that was extended out over the plot. I would push my wheelbarrow, I would stop, I would take a measurement, I would push the wheelbarrow. and so I thought I was getting away from the wheelbarrow thing after I stopped digging graves, but it turned out it was just preparation for my research.
It was just a more high-tech wheelbarrow at that point.
That's right. And so I was thinking a little bit about that as I was walking over here today, that each of us has so many unique and unusual experiences that never really come out in the course of events. as people, we're so prone to kind of lock people into what they are in terms of, their research focus, in terms of, which country they're from, in terms of so many of these little things that we think defines a person. And the reality is you're never going to be able to completely define who a person is because, they've got years and years of these individual experiences, heartaches, heartbreaks, successes that we have no idea about. And, so much of what we are is encapsulated within just a few words a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's such a great point. And I think that's an important story for our students to hear. And not even students, but faculty, whoever, that it's real easy to get pigeonholed into one thing, right? And you come in, you're like, I've got a degree in this, and okay, good. That's what you're doing forever.
Exactly. You're completely right in that. I think that it's important for us to remember that, first of all, let's get out of the habit of pigeonholing people. And second, I think that it's important that we share some of these experiences with others. Each of us has this life story that is who we are. And if there's one thing that I could tell undergraduates who are coming in, graduate students who are coming in, I would say get to know people and find ways to serve within the community, within the college, and find ways to reach out to others because your story is important and it's a big part of understanding, who we are, but also in terms of understanding what other people are.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. So, kind of tying into that, at this point, and I don't know exactly when this episode's going to come out, sometime early in the new year. We're recording in mid-November. So you've got almost a semester under your belt as department chair. Without putting you on the spot, how's that going?
It is like drinking from a fire hose. And you hear that term a lot, but this has certainly been one of the big awakenings that I've had in life. I've had a few different times that I've just felt completely overwhelmed and, you're just trying to play catch up. So
sure.
This isn't the first time I've experienced it. It's not the first time I've been overwhelmed, but it's a lot to bite off. And I would say, Erica Kay, who was the department chair before me, did a great job. Obviously no one's perfect, but I don't think a lot of times I, as a researcher, realized all of the stuff that he had to be doing behind the scenes to simplify things for me. And
sure. He
did a great job of not bringing things up that, didn't reach some level of critical mass. Mm-hmm. And so, if he called me into his office and said, you need to get these reports filed sooner, or you need to do these other things, he was a big buffer between me. And I realized that, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and I'm still getting up to speed on a lot of that. We're fortunate to have a very strong administrative staff within our department. And, to a large extent, if I'm not bothering you, it probably means that, we're doing our best to try to keep things running smoothly behind the scenes. But it's been a big adjustment for me. I never really saw myself in administration when I started my research program. And, to a large extent, it's a lot of fun, but it's also there are times that you just want to pull your hair out. And, you get a little bit of that each day. I would say I'd be lying if I didn't say that I enjoy a lot of aspects of what I'm doing now. At the same time, there are some things that I'm still getting up to speed on even how to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it's only been 4 months, less than 4 months. So no, not even, because I don't even know. I don't know how time works. I sit out here in my office and time just happens around me. Yeah. That's probably why I haven't graduated yet, because I don't have a good grasp of time.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I saw that you got a paper accepted recently. Congratulations.
I did. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So that was So I hadn't published anything out of my master's degree. At the time, I had not planned on doing more school. I was like over it, right? I was so over it. And then at some point, Joey Young kind of talked me into doing more school.
Yeah.
And I haven't forgiven him for it yet. But so I hadn't had much of that experience in the publishing world of trying to like get a paper out. And that was, like you said, an eye-opening experience in my life. And you see not just junior faculty, but I think maybe especially junior faculty that are like so stressed out.
Yeah.
And now I get it. Like even just from a little bit of that, talking to colleagues now working here and having gone through that publishing process, I kind of get it. Like it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, you're an adult now.
Yeah.
In terms of that paper, now you know the currency that we talk about when we talk about research.
Yeah.
Because honestly, when it comes down to being successful in research, you're looking at a few things. You're looking to make sure that you've got some money coming in so that you can pay your students.
Right.
And you're looking at, what are you able to publish in terms of you're taking all of your work, you're encapsulating it into what you hope is a logical story,
Right.
and then you're sending it out to other people to judge and to
Tear
say,
apart.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, you're saying, here is my great work. Please provide criticism of it, and I will take that criticism and I will make it better.
But it's so hard because it's like and I know at some point you probably develop a thicker skin about. You have to, right, or you don't make it. But when you get those like that first, so we've tried to put it in 2 journals, and that first rejection letter that was like, no, I'm like, oh, really? Because I worked hard on this. But it was a good experience, and I'm glad that it's one I got. And one thing I like that we do in our department is almost like not almost, but we kind of force grad students, especially maybe just at the PhD level, to at least submit a paper.
Yes.
Right. That's a requirement.
Yes.
Isn't it?
In fact, the requirement now is, it has to have at least been accepted with revisions before you're able to defend.
Okay.
Now, I don't remember the exact date of that becoming law, but my recommendation is for any graduate student, master's or PhD, to work toward the expectation that you're going to publish something from your thesis or your dissertation in a refereed journal. Now, obviously, there are various levels and various, there are some that you can publish in that they're not going to be particularly rough on you.
Right.
But you find out a lot about yourself. Like you mentioned, that first rejection letter, you find out a lot about who you are and what your research is when you get that rejection letter. You have to reevaluate and say, what is it that we can do or that we need to do to make this important or make this palatable to the scientific community? And that, to me, as a researcher, that's a big deal. When you've published that first paper, you've been initiated. You now know, at least within the context of that paper, what it takes to publish a paper. And that may be the only paper some graduate students publish.
Yeah.
That may be the first of many. We have professors in our department who've published, over 100 papers,
Wow.
over 200 papers.
Wow.
But everyone starts at the same point. Everyone starts without a publication in their docket, and everyone has to go through that same learning process. Whether you're a 4.0 student, whether you're a 3.0 student, you don't automatically get spared that just because you do well in class.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it teaches you that the whole other face of just this whole science, or the academics and academia. Like you said, you can be great in class, but if you can't take and do great research, but if you can't take that and package it, maybe that's all. I think doing the work's only half the job, and then getting it out there.
Yes, I would agree with that. Something, and this might be a good venue to bring this up. is that a lot of times we think in terms of presentations and posters and papers, and we think of having to have different skills for each of those, but every one of those is telling a story. It's just, instead of telling a story about places that I found creepy while I was growing up.
Graves and greenhouses, yeah.
Exactly. Now, which is funny, which is creepier for you, graves or grades? Because I think I've got undergraduate students who are a lot more worried about grades this time of the semester than they are graves.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of, whether it be a presentation, whether it be a poster, whether it be a paper, is this art of storytelling. How often do we think that when we're publishing a paper, we have objectives in that paper, just like the hero or the heroine has in a novel that we read? And just like we lay out the objectives in Harry Potter, we're laying out objectives in, Vikram Baliga and, the story about his research.
Right.
And, so often we start to think of technical writing as being something that is meant to not be engaging, but very much we're telling the same story. Obviously, we're constrained. We have to keep everything within the context of what we actually found and what we can actually accurately surmise, but very much a good research paper can be just, well, maybe not just as fun to read as a good novel, but it ought to be engaging. We ought to have some connection with the person who wrote that article when we're reading through that article.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and so a question I wanted to ask you too is, and this has come up on a couple of previous episodes, or I say I don't even know whenever they come out, but a couple of other interviews I've done, is we find, I think, and I think maybe universities in general are moving towards this, or at least what I have found, and something that I've thought for a long time, is that there's kind of a gap in this feedback loop between the research we do and then the people that need to read about it. So, like, we publish in journals a lot and stuff, and I guess the reason Extension exists is because they take that research and tell the story to the public, the people that are paying for our research, essentially. Do you think that that's, as a, research university, as a department, do you think public outreach is something we should be doing more of? And like taking our research and our information and putting it out there? Or do you think it's something that, needs to be kind of protected within the university?
Wow. Great question. And, speaking to someone who has formerly worked in an extension, I think you really strike to one of the heart of the difficulties that we run into within the research system, which is, I think outreach is absolutely critical to what we're doing. And, being able to share this message or the story with people who go outside of our enclosed scientific community is absolutely critical. However, I think that many times we don't have incentives, or we don't have implied incentives associated with that. If I publish 5 papers in a year, and those 5 papers, I'm an applied scientist, those 5 papers over the course of my lifetime may generate, 50 citations or 100 citations if I'm, if I'm lucky, that is a pretty narrow output. I actually, when I was a graduate student, I was involved helping write an extension publication called Cotton Growth and Development. It was something that was started under some work that Craig Bednarz had done. Mm-hmm. He handed it to me and said, "Hey, I think this would make a great graduate student project because it'll give you a chance to learn about the cotton plant." I had never seen a cotton plant before I started my PhD.
Oh, wow.
And, now that was 2003. Now, 17 years later almost, if someone asked, well, what does Dr. Ritchie do? Everyone says cotton. But I worked on putting this together. I put together some nice pictures on it. And if you look on Google Scholar for Glen Ritchie, the publication that has the most refereed references on it is not one of the papers that I worked the hardest on in terms of the science. It is that cotton growth and development publication.
Wow.
And the interesting thing to me is, it was refereed within the extension system, but it's not considered a refereed journal article. And yet more people have referenced that in their journal articles than any of the other research that I've done. And I think that points to sometimes we overlook the value of the things that we do within the community, within the shareholder community, in our case, the production community,
sure, yeah.
Or the landscaping community, etc. A lot of times we're overlooking that because we're going after this carrot on a stick, which is, a research publication.
Right.
And I think to some extent, seeing the bigger picture and making sure that we're including an outreach component when we're doing our research is critical because, at the end of the day, it's almost disappointing to me. Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
We've been interviewing some very top tier scientists who are coming in to join the abiotic stress and genomics labs here. And, some of these scientists, you look through, some of them have had 14,000 citations.
Wow.
I think Dr. Estrella has, well over $20,000 or 20,000 citations. He may even
That's
be
incredible.
At 50,000 citations. Now think about that for a moment. This morning I was watching a Mark Rober video on, he went in and modified a bowling ball so that when he moves left and right, the bowling ball moves left and right and he can get a strike every time. Basic physics, something that's of interest to the general public, and it's got 11 million views.
Yeah.
And if it's a YouTube video, 11 million views is a lot of views, but it's not unusual.
No, right.
But you compare that with, let's say we've got 100,000 citations. I don't have 100,000 citations, but let's say you've got a high power scientist who has 100,000 citations. The difference between 100,000 and 10 million is not a 10-fold increase. It's a 100-fold increase.
Yeah.
There are 10 times or 100 times as many people who are interested in a bowling ball that moves left and right than are referencing some of our papers. And so I really like the idea that let's reach out, let's talk about what we're doing in a format that is of interest to people. Let's engage in the community generally, and let's get people excited about what we do, not just a small group of people, but a relatively large group of people.
As many as we can, I guess.
Exactly.
Well, and I've been so appreciative that you've been, I'm making noise. I move stuff during these interviews. I make noise. That you've been so supportive of just this little project. Because it was one of those things that, when you were going through your interview stuff for the chair position, you said a couple times, we need to be reaching out in different ways. And you said podcasts, and that stuck in my brain for whatever reason. Because I'd been wanting to do it anyway. So I just kind of did it. And so I appreciate, one, you not firing me for doing that. But two, just being on the show and being supportive of it. I think that says a lot about maybe where we're headed, and maybe where, as a department, as you as departmental leadership, just kind of the ethos of maybe what we're doing. I appreciate that because I was extension too for 4 or 5 years, and that kind of never leaves. You kind of never get that out of your blood, I don't think.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you're doing this, and I think you're right. Once you start tapping into a group of people who are interested in what you're doing, it's almost like a drug.
Yeah, it is.
But the cool thing about it is, this is our story. This is something that's going to be available in 50 or 100 years. Your great-grandchildren may be listening to Vikram Baliga, and his podcast. It's part of the imprint that you leave on society. And I think as scientists, we tend to be a little bit conservative in our uptake of technology. Mm-hmm. And the risk that we run into is we could be left behind in this process where, something that was considered a little bit humorous, when YouTube came out, it was mainly cat videos.
Right.
I'm not going to say how I know that. But I think we run the risk of, we're already many generations digitally past that point.
Yeah.
And, this ought to be a mainstream process that we're using. And so I'm glad that you're involving us in this, because I think that this is going to be important to the story that we're sharing.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. And I think that, other things I think as a university, we do as a whole a pretty good job of using social media well and doing videos and education and stuff like that. But we could do better. And I think as a department, that's somewhere that I hope we start heading.
Yeah.
So on that note, like, where do you see, where do you see us going? Like, what are your thoughts and visions for our department in the next 5 or 10 or however many years?
Right. Well, and it's interesting with administration, you kind of connect administrators to the things that they did or that happened during the time that they were in, for instance, the chair position.
Sure.
If you look with Eric, we have the new wing of the Plant and Soil Science building. We have the recruitment of the governor's research initiative with the Abiotic Stress and Genomics Lab.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of things that he did. That's just the tip of the iceberg of the things that were accomplished with him. If I was in this role for 5 years or, however many years, maybe it's going to be 3 months. Maybe I'm going to have a surprise for me when I get back. But if there are things that I would like connected with my time, first of all, I would like to see our graduate students be recognized as full-fledged, full-scale scientists. And I think the way that comes out is, first of all, through publications, being recognized within the literature mm-hmm. as someone who has gone through that process. But also in terms of, I would like to see students, undergraduate and graduate students, connected with the community, involved in service projects, service projects at the greenhouse or the farm.
Sure.
But also service projects potentially at the South Plains Food Bank, other places where we can be connected with people and, first of all, I think there's a certain connection that you get. I've heard it said, the things that we serve, we love, and the things that we love, we serve, mm-hmm. which is, if you're providing service, you're going to develop a connection there. I think if I had a choice, I would really like to see the output and the connection of our students within the community, within the department and college to grow to where I get it. There's always going to be a teacher-student relationship between the faculty and the students. But especially with the graduate students, I want them, as they leave Texas Tech, to feel that they have the skills, the capabilities, and the connections that they need in order to be successful in life. Whether successful means continuing on and becoming a scientist in an academic institution or the USDA, whether it means working privately, whether it means going back to a family business or a family farm. But I hope that at least a big part of the output that we see moving into the future is the impact that it has on the individuals within the department. And I think that there are going to be opportunities for growth and expansion, from a building standpoint, from a improving our facility standpoint. But I hope that we don't lose the bigger picture, which is that our role is centered around individuals and the difference and the impact that we can make to the world, not so much, buildings or other things in and of themselves. Mm-hmm. These are tools toward an end, and I want the end to be the positive impact that we have on others.
No, that's awesome. That's really great. Well, we've done about 32, 33 minutes, so we'll start wrapping up. Are there any last thoughts you wanted to share? Anything I didn't cover?
No, I think that this is a great idea that we're doing here. And I think that it's important. Some of the advice that I give my children, and, my oldest children are in college now. My youngest is in second grade. Mm-hmm. But my goal is, you hear a lot about soft skills and, how do we develop soft skills? A lot of these things, the way that we develop skills is by being put in a situation that requires us to either use those skills or to develop and then use those skills. And it's my hope that we can find ways to, we're not a cookie cutter institution. When you get your PhD, you're not going to look like every other PhD that we had here. And we talk about, creepy places. One of the creepiest places I've seen for graduate students or undergraduate students is the horizon, where you're looking at future you in 6 months or a year and saying, what am I going to be doing?
Right.
And, a big part, to me, that's a big part of adulthood, is making that step from, the school system is something that you're familiar with from the time you're 5 or 6 years old, or even younger, and actually stepping out into the big bad world and discovering that you're big enough and bad enough to hold your own within that world is a big step. My hope is that we're moving toward that, where you feel comfortable, even though it's something new and it's something unknown, but our students are going to have the opportunity to know that they can deal with things that are difficult. They can deal with things that are unknown, and they're going to be just fine because they have the skills and the capabilities and the maturity that are going to help them to be successful.
That's awesome. That's such a good thought, I think. And that's probably a good place to leave this, is just, I think that's very hopeful, though, that it can be scary getting out of school over and over again, especially for us repeat offenders. But the fact that, we've hopefully trained our students to be successful humans, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if we can be successful on that end, everything else is going to take care of itself.
Well, Dr. Ritchie, thanks for so much for being on with me, and just for sitting down, chatting, and sharing your thoughts. Do you do social media? Is that a thing you do? Do you want people to find you, or do you try to hide? I don't blame you if you do.
Yeah, I'm an infant in social media.
Okay.
I'll be honest. About a week ago, I finally set up a Twitter account for real.
Okay.
I'd done a couple of others, or started a couple of others, but every time I tried to put in a cool handle, they're like, "No, you've got to use your real name." I'm like, well, that removes all of my desire to make comments, because I wanted to be able to hide behind the handle.
Do it anonymously, yeah.
Yeah. I traditionally have not been a heavy social media producer, although I've been a heavy social media. All right. Last quick funny story.
Sure. Yeah.
So my wife has been active on Facebook for years. I actually was part of the pioneering group of Facebook users.
Right.
Because, when I was at the University of Georgia, we had a graduate student who was very interested in it. We set it up back when you had to have a .edu email address.
Yeah.
And then I stopped using it. She used it pretty heavily, but on our computer, she had everything so that all you had to do was go to Facebook and you could log in. And she had her account. She had all of my kids' accounts who had accounts, and my account. So one April 1st, a few years ago, and, a little bit of background here. At this point, we already had our 7 children. And so people kind of knew us as the family that has lots of children. So, our youngest was about 2 or 3 years old. One of our older kids had a doctor's appointment. Christina took the kid to the doctor's appointment, so she was out of the house. I had a few minutes to myself with the computer. And so being April 1st, I logged into her account and went to Google, found a nice picture of an ultrasound with twins.
Oh no.
And I posted it on her account, and I put something to the effect of, I felt like I was much sicker on this pregnancy than I had been on the other ones, and didn't know why. Well, we found out today, and then I posted the picture of these twins in an ultrasound. And then I logged out of her account. I went onto my account, and I put something, I'm so excited for both of us. I never thought that we'd have twins. My wife was a twin. And then I went into each of the kids' accounts. And for my son, I put, I think it's going to be 2 boys. For my daughter, I think it's going to be 2 girls. For my second daughter, I think it'll be a boy and a girl. And so I kind of started the thread going. About 10, 15 minutes later, I get a call from Christine, and she said, "What did you post on
What
Facebook?"
did you do? Are you still in trouble for that?
I'm still somewhat in trouble for that. So I wouldn't. I'm more of a social media troll.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's something that I'm looking to expand, and I'm hoping to really improve my Twitter following by virtue of doing things like podcasts.
Well, cool. Well, we'll tag your Twitter. What's your handle? What'd you come up with? It's fine. I'll put it in the show notes. That's fine. But thanks again, and I really appreciate your time.
All right, thanks, Vikram.
Yeah, so I still don't know his Twitter handle. Whatever. But I hope you enjoyed this replay of an episode that originally came out quite a while ago. This was I actually just right at about a year ago. This was our I think first episode of 2020. No, January 21st, 2020. And the world is quite different since then, but Dr. Ritchie's still a good human. And we should still, I think, all strive to treat each other and our students and our colleagues in academia the way that Glen Ritchie would. Thanks for listening. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. I think this is going to be such a good year for Planthropology. I can't wait for you to hear all the cool stuff I have lined up for you, all the wonderful guests that I've been reaching out to, and that I'm planning to have on the show this year. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's all because of you. Again, follow us on social media. Search for Planthropology. It's anthropology with a PL slapped on the front. Look for the bristlecone pine, designed by the wonderful Dr. Beth Nichols. Yep. So go check out her page too, at Vintage Botanist, at Vintage Botanist on Twitter. If you are a Patreon supporter, you're going to have some cool stuff coming to you in the next month or two. I've got some cool care packages heading your way. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, head over to patreon.com/Planthropology. And for as little as like $1 a month, you can support the show. If not, just share it with your friends, tell someone to listen to Planthropology, and send in your ideas. Thanks, as always, to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science for all the support. Y'all are super rad. You are the coolest plant people I know, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again in a couple of weeks.